Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Logistics Lens. I am super excited today to have Lieutenant General Simerly, the director of the Defense Logistics Agency, as my guest. Sir, it is a real honor to have you on the show. My last 4 years in uniform were at headquarters DLA, and I just have such a huge soft spot in my heart for the unbelievably fantastic job that the people throughout DLA do to support everyone around the world. And I've had the opportunity to stay aware of what you're doing inside DLA and what you've led. And I just could not think any higher of the agency, and so greatly appreciate you making time out of your schedule to be here today.
Hey, Kevin, thanks for the opportunity. And I'm always privileged to be able to talk about this great DLA team and what we're doing. I think what we are doing is consequential, and I think it's foundational to our nation's success in our national security. So I really enjoy the chance to talk about what we're doing, to share, especially if I have an opportunity to learn from others' ideas.
Great, sir. Well, I've got some questions for you that I think will be very informational to the folks that tune into our podcast. And just want to kind of start off with you giving a brief summary of what DLA's overarching mission is in today's global security landscape. It's very complex and can be very challenging, but I know that DLA is deeply involved. I call DLA the mothership of logistics. I say that with all fondness in my heart. But how has the mission evolved in DLA in response to the recent shifts in DOW priorities?
Well, what I'd start off with, when it comes to the mission, I think the most critical element is our identity. Who is DLA? Who are we? And I think it begins with our role as the nation's logistics combat support agency, with a real emphasis on combat support. That's why we exist, is to support combat and to enable our warfighters to be successful and to win on the battlefield, to enable that lethality. So if we understand that's the foundation of what we must do and who we are, then you can understand why we have a responsibility to provide world-class logistics to our nation's warfighters on a global basis. And that means we have to be able to act with agility, be adaptive to the changing circumstances, and offer resilient solutions to the contested logistics challenges that are taking place out there. And the world's quite dynamic now, no secret there. And most of your listeners probably are well aware of our considerations about the contested logistics environment and why things are changing so rapidly, and that past solutions may not be adequate to the challenges of the present and the future. And so for us, as we think about our mission and the way we go about meeting our responsibilities to the nation, we have to have an understanding that the status quo is not an option. And so we have to have this bias for action and this bias for change if we're going to be able to meet our commitments to the nation.
Yeah, there's no doubt that it is a changing world, and a lot of the things that we do, core logistics is core logistics, but how we do them and some of the challenges that we face in this evolving environment is causing all of us across the law community to take a look at our processes, how we do them, where we can improve. And I know DLA is deeply into that, and greatly appreciate the challenges that you're meeting head on. I want to ask you, there's a perception sometimes that logistics is almost an afterthought when it comes to strategic planning. How do you feel about that? How do you view that perception? Is that right? Is it as afterthought, or are there changes in how logistics is being perceived now, and that it's actually become something more than, oh, let's make sure that we have the right parts at the right time?
No, I think, most of us have this experience at the tactical level where we create the maneuver plan and then go to the logisticians and say, hey, you need to support this, figure it out. And of course, we know that reverse engineering the maneuver plan based upon logistics is not the right answer either. But I would believe, and I do believe, that at the strategic level, we've got a much more mature understanding of what's necessary to set conditions for victory, and that you have to incorporate the logistics warfighting function, the sustainment warfighting function, and be integrated by design in all of your war plans and all of your solutions if you're going to be successful. Fortunately, in our nation and with our military, our senior leaders have long recognized this. And we've got a long history of past wars and operations where logistics has been incorporated successfully, integrated by design from the very beginning. But there are plenty of examples that we all are aware of, tactical, operational, even strategic, where unfortunately logistics was not factored in appropriately in either maneuver design or operational design, and operations suffered for it. So, if you start off with the foundational understanding that logistics is really the backbone to military operations, and maybe the fist is what makes the impact on the battlefield, but it's the backbone that enables those punches to be thrown. And be thrown in succession and continuously and with power, all those aspects of it. So for me, it's really clear. But I'm a logistician. Of course, I know that innately, and so do you as well and most of the listeners, and I imagine the challenge for us is to be able to communicate, to integrate, to be aggressive in the way that we articulate our perception of the challenges, to fight our way to the table, and then to be able to propose solutions to those challenges in a timely manner that can then be resourced. I think if you consider the term contested logistics and that whole concept, and as part of the joint concept of warfighting. It's been really powerful the last several years, and in my career, spanning over 35 years, there's never been a period of time when I've heard senior leaders talk more knowingly and more persuasively about the challenges of sustaining the fight, and using that term contested logistics to help frame it has been really helpful for us as a community. And it's not just talk, right? There were a few years as that was gaining currency or getting understanding and support, and we'd hear some of the things that we would say echoed back to us in the logistics communities, but without necessarily action or investment. And I think we're really turning a corner there, where we're really starting to match some of our understanding of requirements with the resourcing and the commitment to meet them. And that's what makes this time and this opportunity so special right now. Some very unique challenges, but also some unique opportunities to meet those challenges.
Yeah, I'll tell you, sir. To me, kind of a turning point was during COVID. It seemed to me like the term logistics and supply chain became much more prevalent, not just in the military, but really across the nation. And so it seemed at that point it was starting to become more of a, hey, what is this logistic stuff? We need to make sure that we actually can get what we want for toys for our kids, and we've got to be able to get gas for our cars, and all the challenges that happened during COVID or when various events have happened. The average American seems to have a better understanding, not a complete understanding, but a better understanding of just how important logistics is. So I wanted to ask you, what do you view as the relationship between the logistics capabilities that we bring to the table and national security? How do they tie in together, and how does DLA play into that?
Well, I mean, they're inextricably linked. There's no doubt, as I said before, that logistics is a foundational capability in our instrument of national power. And I'll just say this: you can't be lethal without logistics. And you probably heard me say that before in a different setting and in a different way, but I think lethality is inachievable unless we've got the conditions set with all the logistics functions that have to be provided in advance of the fight, and then before, during, and after a fight as well. But what's really interesting to me is the fact that I think we've gained a greater knowledge. You mentioned the pandemic as a place that illuminated this and got gain greater awareness of some of the challenges that we face, but also some greater understanding of how those challenges are interrelated into so many functions that are performed across our country, not just in the national defense field, but overall, so that overall supply chain awareness, I guess you could call it, has been helpful. I would say also, the war in Ukraine has certainly helped to heighten an awareness of logistics challenges, supply chain challenges, and also what's different about that type of war. Large scale combat operations, prolonged conflict, and the endurance that's required to be able to sustain those. And also a deeper consideration about the importance of magazine depth, not only for munitions, but for other categories of sustainment as well. So if you take those two events and then cast them in the context of potential conflict with China, a peer competitor, uh, you know, with an overlay of the tyranny of distance and all the challenges of austerity in the Indo-PACOM theater of operations. And the more you study that challenge, the more and more you have to be convinced that logistics is foundational, and we have to solve most of those logistics challenges in advance of the fight. We can't afford to solve them after the fight has begun.
Absolutely. You're, of course, right when you talk about the pandemic and then the whole war between Russia and Ukraine. It's been in the limelight of things that the average American is involved or looking into. So, uh, one thing too, and we talk about AI so much, and the value and need for data and to be able to analyze it and make data informed decisions. And sir, I know you're a huge proponent of that. I remember from your time at Cascom, the first time I heard you talk about that, you've really been leading the charge on that. And I give DLA just so much credit for that and for you personally. Well, what role do you see, not just the things we just now talked about, what other technology do you see this impacting our ability to conduct logistics and supply chain operations in a better, quicker, more accurate manner? And what do you see for the future of technology?
I mean, it is the question of the moment. Um, and I think, we all need to challenge ourselves to try to foresee what's in the art of possible with the technology that's available now and that's emerging as well. And foundationally, I think it begins with an understanding that data is the most decisive commodity that we manage here in DLA and as logisticians in general. And then, our ability to harness that data to put it to work for us to help us solve problems in advance is critical to our future success. Part of that also involves not just the technology, but our ability to apply the technology. And for our workforce members at Echelon, can really optimize the data to solve problems, and that means they have to have an understanding of the foundation of data, data literacy, data fluency, et cetera. We call that data acumen here in DLA. But there's another element to it as well. And certainly, for a leader in my position, but also, leaders throughout our service, each of the services, more and more we have to have uh, tech acumen. So, going beyond just data acumen, we have to understand how is data going to be applied to solve problems, but also develop the right ecosystem in terms of the data fabric, the data mesh, the IT solutions, and to help, be uh, in charge of that development, to lead and to prioritize that introduction, to lead change management and culture management within organizations so we can really adopt those technologies, not bring them in, develop them, and put them on the shelf. And we've got all seen examples of that where we've made huge investments and spent a lot of time onboarding new tools, and those tools stay in the toolbox. We can't afford that, right? We've got to apply those tools. We've got to have the workforce that understands how to do that, which means we have to recruit, develop, and retain those people with those skill sets. But then specifically with the tools that are becoming available, especially as we think about commercial applications in the logistics field, the supply chain improvements that have been driven by artificial intelligence, generative particular agentive artificial intelligence. It's quite simply game changing. And, I'd go as far to say that, we're probably on the brink of a revolution in military logistics, to the extent that artificial intelligence is the new gunpowder. I think it is that transformational that it's going to allow us to not only plan with precision, to better understand demand and anticipate it, but also to have greater resilience in our entire supply chain and to integrate those solutions across warfighting functions, across services, and into the COCOMs as well. I think our success in future large scale fights is going to be measured by how successful we're able to maintain artificial intelligence dominance in the logistics field. And that's the responsibility we have in this moment is to bring on board and develop and apply those artificial intelligence tools, those engines that are going to drive our success.
I I don't know if you just came up with that on the spot, but the artificial intelligence is the new gunpowder. That says something. That's right to the point. So I'll remember that one for sure. With the new technology that is available, and the importance of it, what what do you view as the most significant barriers to actually preventing the innovation that we need within the Department of War?
I think of that question similar to a discussion about interoperability. So there's three dimensions of interoperability. There's the technical, there's the procedural, and then there's the human. So I don't think that the greatest challenge is technical, right? For a long time, we were hyper focused on the technical challenges in terms of data integration and analytical power. But I believe that we have technology that's available now that's being proven every single day in the commercial realm that we can readily adopt to one, help us share data across the rugged digital terrain of the department, to integrate those data flows and to apply the appropriate analytical engines. That's there now. So I don't think it's a technical aspect. I think we're overcoming some of the human hurdles that have been in place where we haven't trusted each other with our data, and we're getting more and more to a collective understanding that it's not services data, it's not DLA's data, it's all of our data, and we have to make it accessible so we can make the best decisions. So I think the department has really helped to lead us to this broader understanding and help us overcome the human obstacles to interoperability and into being able to make the most of the new data environment. And then the next aspect is the procedural. What is it we need to share? How do we need to share it? Let's develop the protocols. Let's rehearse it. Let's apply it as routinely as we can to overcome some of those challenges. And I think that's where we are right now. We're really focused on the procedural aspect. Good use case for this is improving our demand forecasting accuracy for repair parts with each of the services. And we've hovered around 60% accurate for years. And we relied upon spreadsheet exchange and disparate algorithmic approaches at different levels. And it's not gotten us, anywhere close to where we need to be to have the resilient supply chain and the valid planning that's necessary for readiness. Our goal in DLA is to get up to 85% demand forecasting accuracy this year. And we've got two services that are really making some gains where we've been able to establish the data flows and get beyond aggregated, curated data and get down to the raw data where we can see when weapon systems are breaking, why those components are breaking, where, and then how and where they're being repaired, and factor those into our plans for those weapon systems. So it's going to get us at a whole new level of precision that's going to let us not only achieve that accuracy, but then turn that into availability, which then means readiness. So that's just one use case that I would say that is going to be realized in the near future And that, as we overcome the procedural boundary and we really determine how we're going to share data and establish the protocols for it, I think the gains are going to be enormous for us.
And that is just super exciting, and for those who may not be aware, if we could get to 85% accuracy in our forecast planning, that will equate to a significant jump in readiness, which is, of course, what we're all focused on these days. So I think that's exciting. I hope you hit the mark, and, I know there's a lot of people that are listening that are probably really eager to help. And I know you've got other folks that are already involved, and you're doing things internally, within DLA. Speaking to Mr. Roberts, I know that he is eyeballs deep in helping to make this happen. Same with General Sanford. The whole enterprise is dug in, and it's exciting to see where this is going to go. And of course, we all hope that we can get where we need to be. Sir, you co-authored a paper, a white paper, and it was called "The Joint Logistics Enterprises: Modern Contested Logistics Truths." And in that, you highlighted um, really a pretty significant redefinition of what you call logistics truths. And I want to list them quickly, and then I've got a couple questions I want to ask you about that. So the truths that you came up with, I think, are spot on. I mean, they just cut to the chase. Logistics wins wars when data leads the fight. Just in time is not on time. Logistics networks must be better connected and protected. Precise requirements drive readiness. Resilient distribution networks power operational dominance. And you said this earlier, lethality is impossible without logistics. So my question to you is, log truths have been around for a while. I think it was Lieutenant General Cooper from the Air Force that had put something out initially. But what caused you in this day and age to need to redefine these truths, especially when much of what was put out before by General Cooper still resonates, but clearly you found that there was a need to get even more precise and redefine some of these.
Kevin, thanks for you giving me a chance to describe this, and all credit to General Cooper with his original vision. And I agree with you. The six contested logistics truth that I think he published around 2015 or 2016 are enduring, are extremely relevant, and should be something that all logisticians consider as they think about their approach to problem solving. So, definitely want to give him credit for that. In fact, ironically, just a couple weeks ago, we had him here in our headquarters here at DLA
Yes.
for a warfighter talk session where he had a chance to talk to our workforce about his insights and describe some of his viewpoints behind the contested or behind the logistics truths that he posed. Um, you know, it really starts with this responsibility that DLA has to communicate the way we're looking at problems and the way that we think they can be solved. And as the Defense Logistics Agency, we have a responsibility to communicate about defense logistics within the department. And where we can to raise the level of conversation and help to explain both internally and externally about our prioritization and what it is we have to do differently. So if you think about the challenge of contested logistics, and what we have to do differently, right? How we have to think, act, and operate differently if we're going to be successful in this environment, and why it's different from past conflicts, and why it's different from the coin era logistics that we were so capable of providing, and especially where we had permissive environments that allowed us to deliver food and fuel to the fob that we know are not going to be available on current or future battlefields. As an example, so thinking about that challenge and how we communicate it, it really became apparent to us that this was another means to stimulate conversation and to develop some understanding about what is changing and to put a finer point on some of the things that we have to do differently than in the past. So, I'll take for example, just-in-time logistics, right? It was an efficiency-based driven, commercially adopted model that has been proven in many, many different environments. To your point about the pandemic, that was a period of time when we showed that just-in-time logistics wasn't suitable to all conditions and all environments. And if we put a premium on resiliency over efficiency, then that leads us to understand that just-in-time is not suitable to most military problems, and especially as we think about being contested at all levels of war, from the tactical to the strategic, and in all domains. That it's not the model that's going to drive us to success. And then posing the question of what's the alternative, right? So in the Army, we have a history of solving that problem through what I would call just in case logistics, where I fill up my containers of, with every part or every component that I think I might need. And I expect that container to be one or two terrain features behind my maneuver force, and I can reach back and access those things. Well, I think we know in the transparent battlefield that we're seeing in Ukraine right now, that's not a survivable model. It's not affordable. And building iron mountains on the battlefield it presents all sorts of vulnerabilities and difficulties. So that's just the just in case model is just as dangerous as the just in time model. So that's why we posit just enough, right? And there might be better ways to describe it, but that's kind of a simple shorthand way of saying we have to put in the work to define what's necessary, to prioritize those elements that are really going to drive readiness and preparation for the fight, during the fight, and after the fight, and make sure that those things are available to sustain the fight. And we have to make some tough calls there, right? It's not going to be everything in the kitchen sink, and it's not going to be, well, I can wait until that part arrives from another part of the world, or another combatant command or something like that. We know that's not a viable option either. So what's the middle ground? And I think that middle ground is arrived through precision in planning, precision in distribution, all those aspects that the services are working through as well. So that's really the intent behind the 6 contested logistics truths, and a little bit of discussion about one of them.
Yeah, DLA is such a huge, massive enterprise supporting people, war fighters, and obviously for HADR operations and many other things around the globe. And the idea of how you get just enough, as you put it, how in the world do you balance having just enough with the cost efficiency that's expected from the taxpayer and from DOW leadership? How do you find that balance between providing what's just enough and not overspending or buying too much and then having to trim it out and then rebuy it? I mean, that there's a very delicate balance there. So how do you do that? That's tough.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I don't think there will ever be enough fiscal resources available for us to anticipate every challenge, and every readiness challenge, especially when it comes to fleet readiness. And in the past, we've tried to spend our way through some of those challenges, right? And what we found was we didn't always buy the right things. And then, so then if we didn't buy the right thing, then we had to suffer through the lead time challenge to get something that we didn't think we needed. Or we bought the wrong things, and we moved them around the world. We stored them and procured them at great expense. And so, and my point going back to what I said before is we can't afford to be imprecise. And we have to apply better analytical capability to anticipate what's going to be required. And we have to prioritize as well. So there is a balanced approach. We can't anticipate everything, right? That's why, I would never say I want 100% demand forecasting accuracy. Our calculus is 85 is going to be close enough to get us to the readiness requirements and give us the responsiveness that we need. But the calculus isn't just about what we buy; it's where we put things.
Right.
So
Right.
I think about overcoming the challenge of contested logistics really in 4 ways. One is people, the second is precision, the third is posture, and the fourth is partnerships. And you've heard me talk about that. That's really those four things are the elements of the DLA strategy and how we're going to transform ourselves to meet those challenges. But when it comes to posture, um, it's not just about forward positioning stock, right? The positioning aspect is kind of the traditional way we think about it. That's very much part of the equation of posture. What it is we decide to place where, being sensitive to the threat of the battlefield, fully understanding potential distribution bottlenecks, as we place those items. But beyond just the positioning aspect, it's also the presence. Where do we have a footprint? Where do we have relationships? Where do we have the access and overflight opportunity that allow us to put things in the right place and expanding that where it's necessary? And then I think the third component of posture is stance. Do we have the ability to project our capability? So, does it have to be something that is, very proximate to the battlefield, or can we afford two or three terrain features, or something that's required to maintain readiness in the first island chain? Can it be resident in the third island chain, as an example, in the Indo-PACOM theater? So there's that aspect, and the fact that as we think about the homeland, right, and this is a really important part of the national defense strategy that was just released, understand the homeland as the priority theater of operation. And it's not just a place where we generate combat power. It's not just a place from which we project combat power, but it's a theater of operations in its own right that we have to understand. And so, as I think about global posture, it's not just about supporting away games. It's about how I'm supporting the home game as well. And do we really have our posture in the homeland arrayed appropriately to support a fight that in part will be in the homeland? I think is important consideration. And then I guess the last element I would say of stance then for posture is the ability to protect. Right, so you project capability, and you have to be able to protect capability. So understanding the threats. By the way, we just recently created and enhanced our J2 here at DLA. We didn't have a J2, but we do now, and we're growing that capability for us to understand, articulate, and share threats to our sustainment posture. So that's a critical capability for us to understand what it is we have to protect against, and then develop the means to do that. Some of that is resilience within our supply chains. Certainly the cyber resilience, where we have the greatest risk of conflict, where you could say we're in conflict every single day in the cyber realm, but also how we physically protect those things. So how do we array counter UAS capability, or how do we integrate that into air and missile defense coverage? And how does that factor into how we decide to position material across the globe? Those are all considerations that we have to take into account.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that you did not really have a J2 capability. I've been retired now for 10 years. I left DLA in 2017 and left the uniform at that time. But I remember we did have a J2 capability at the time, but I never really was able to observe it. I was, working in other areas, but that just seems like a great logical improvement to be able to know what the threats are that's out there and the best way to avoid them or get over them. So, what is that the specific thing that you're focused on? Is the use of the J2 folks to try to identify, address, and resolve those supply chain disruptions when there's so much going on in the world, you never know where all these various disruptions could occur.
I wouldn't say it's the primary, certainly not the sole thing that we think is necessary in order to understand threats to our supply chain performance, but it's a critical component. And we've had a core cadre of intel and security personnel in DLA, but unfortunately, we've not extended that out to our regional commands and our major subordinate commands as they look at their specific supply chain challenges in their part of the world or in part of DLA. They haven't had analytical capability to help compose priority intelligence requirements or to develop a program of analysis that's coherent. And I think just even the moniker J2 gives us greater credibility externally as we integrate with other partners and the co-coms and the services as well. So we're growing out that capability that we've had, inherent capability for a long time, but we recognize that's a component. But back to your question, then. So what is core to our ability to provide the resilient supply chain support that's going to be necessary in the future fight? Number one, I would say beyond just understanding the threats, understanding the components of risk to our supply chain operations and being better able to define it and describe it and then develop mitigation plans. So with our supply chain modernization effort, we've done some baseline of that supply chain risk management work, that scrim work, and a key element is this understanding that in many places, we have analog components in our supply chains. Our supply chains in DLA are similar to the way that DLA was composed of many different elements across the department. And in some ways, our supply chain strategies have been uh, decentralized both in design and execution. And that, you know, served as well for many, many years and through many different conflicts. But if you look at the conditions of this current operating environment, the contested logistics environment, I think you realize that that's no longer suitable for the challenge that we face now. So we have to elevate those. And number one is we have to digitize those supply chains. We've got to create a digital thread end to end so we can, really see and understand supply chain performance. We have to create the means to, establish a digital tableau that helps us visualize and optimize and make the right decisions in time with those supply chains at the right level within the agency. And then, thirdly, we need to be able to understand how survivable those supply chains are and how well they're going to perform against conditions of combat. And for us, that means creating digital twins of those supply chains so we can war game, we can model them against and pressure test them against the conditions of wartime and really understand where we have risk and if that risk is acceptable and be able to define what it's going to take to mitigate that risk. That's the path that we're on currently.
Yeah, I'll tell you, sir, you hit on a term that I'm focused on, wargaming. Uh, are we doing enough in that area? I know there's improvements across the services, and DLA has been right in the forefront of trying to lean more heavily into that. But when it comes to wargaming, and I'm not talking about just logistics wargaming, but as a whole, you're talking a DOW war game. Too often, in my opinion, wargaming for the logistics aspect sometimes just gets assumed that things will get there and they'll be there when they're needed. But I know you are focused on really truly pressure testing the system to make sure that we can do what we say we can do and to identify those areas where we may need to improve. How is uh, the infusion of industry capabilities being infused into the wargaming that you're doing in DLA and whatever you've observed from perhaps the joint staff or other services? Are we including industry enough to make sure that they can carry their fair share of the requirement and do what they say they can do in addition to what the government is doing?
Yeah, I love that question, and I think the direct answer is: Are we including them enough, industry enough, into wargaming challenges? The very clear answer to me is no, uh, and I think there's tremendous opportunity to uh, illuminate our understanding of our supply chain challenges and to develop solutions with the appropriate integration of industry into our wargaming efforts. The good news is, I think, not just within DLA, but also within the joint logistics enterprise and also in the co-common service level, we're seeing more and more opportunities and more deliberate efforts to bring in industry to help us understand our problems and also for us to help them understand our problems that we have to overcome together. I'll give a great example. And I think Transcom has really been good at this for some time with integrating some of their partners that they call their fourth component into some of their warfighting challenges. And they've been able to shape very feasible solutions based upon input from their carriers. Similar model, we recently partnered with Transcom to bring in CEOs of domestic refiners for fuel for petroleum. And man, just in a single session that General Reed and I co-hosted in the fall, we learned so much from those partners as we described the specific challenges that we're trying to overcome. And we got some, immediate feedback on our idea of potential solutions. In some cases, they definitely curbed our expectations of the art of the possible. Surge capability is an example. But in other cases, they gave us an idea of some solutions that we hadn't considered. So the value is tremendous, and I think there's a lot of opportunity out there to do this. So with the Elite Constellation Wargaming series, this whole command post exercise that is part of the joint enterprise, we're participating in that very broadly, along with the other relevant COCOMs. And our intent is in this series to bring in industry. And so we've got some plans this year to do that. So that's one area. The other area is within the supply chains. As we refine those strategies, each one of our supply chain owners within DLA will be bringing in industry for wargaming events focused on their supply chain. Now, we did one with great success a few years ago with our clothing and textile supply chain, and we learned a ton from industry on their ability to surge to wartime requirements. Now we think we can, have even more effective engagements with industry. So we're going to be creating more opportunities for industry to come in, participate in our wargaming events. And by the way, we have one upcoming on the contested logistics, mostly for our Class 9 suppliers at the agency level as well this spring. But there'll be more and more of those opportunities, both in terms of our command post exercises and our specific supply chain war games.
Oh, that's great to hear, sir, and I know you're leaning into it hard, and I've also talked to Admiral English on the joint staff, and they're doing the same thing. It's clear that, it's important, and necessary to have, government and industry, and academia, for that matter, joined at the hip when we, go ahead, sir.
Can I add something to that too, Kevin? So
Of course, yes, please.
the Secretary of War is really setting the pace on this, with the recent acquisition reform strategy or acquisition transformation strategy, his engagement with industry and the Arsenal of Freedom tour. And so, we are seeing a greater outreach to industry where we're having realistic conversations about the limits and what's required to stimulate greater performance. And so it's opening many doors. And what we found is in every case, our industry partners are eager to have the conversation. So we really have to create conditions for it. It's our responsibility.
Yes, sir, yeah, and you're doing it, and it's great. It's noticed too, trust me. We see a shift, which is fantastic. We're talking a lot about industry, so I wanted to touch on the defense industrial base. In your paper, you mentioned a diminishing and fragile defense industrial base. So what specific strategies are you employing there at DLA to mitigate the risks that are associated with this trend? A lot less people, a lot less companies in the industrial base, aging weapon systems, where parts are no longer being produced. Maybe you're not getting people to bid on the parts that you need to be able to provide the warfighter. There are a lot of concerns and focus on the DIB right now. So, what are you doing inside DLA to mitigate some of those risks?
Yeah, I mean, it is a significant challenge. And, you've heard us communicate about it before. What I would like to share, though, is the trend is trending positive right now in terms of our industrial base. And by that, specifically, what I mean is we went through several years through the pandemic and after, really about 6 years, where we had a pretty significant loss and we hemorrhaged industry partners within DLA specifically. I'm talking about, but it was true across the department. And we lost, depending upon the supply chain, upwards of 24, 25%. So almost fully a quarter of our partners. And up until 2 years ago, that loss continued, even though the numbers got smaller by year. A year ago, we flatlined. So we gained as many as we lost. And this past year, we actually gained about 1%. So it's a meager improvement. We still are diminished in our overall capacity, but we are seeing some recovery. And there's a whole host of factors to that, some of which, we contributed to. Some of those are part of the overall environment, recovering from some challenges with the pandemic and the other economic factors, um, workforce related, et cetera. So there is some promise there. Also within that, part of the promise too is the growth and the innovation that's part of our small business environment. So we've always had a very robust partnership with small businesses that can innovate rapidly, can respond to need, and that complement our large suppliers, our original equipment manufacturers in many ways. That second, third tier, fourth tier supplier base, and so that's been resilient. We had about 20% new entries in our small business space in this past year, so quite a few new entrants is there as well that are coming in with new capability, new capacity, new technology. Advanced manufacturing would be one example of something that's, coming on new with some of our suppliers, both on the OEM side and also on the small business side. So there is some promise. But going back to your basic question, what are we doing about it? Number one is, we're engaging more. We've accelerated our means to communicate with industry in our different segments across our 9 supply chains and in our other logistics functions that we provide. So that's part of it, just the engagement strategy. And then beyond that, we're working to develop improved demand signals to them. And that's traditionally the challenge that we hear, is that frequently we come to them late in the process, and we expect results early. And we know that in many cases it's just not physically possible or fiscally possible. And there's many different challenges associated with that. So that gets back to the precision and the forecasting. So the better we can understand need, the more we can give lead time notice to our partners, and the better they will be being able to respond. The other aspect is this investment that we've traditionally made in industry before need, that gives us greater capacity and access to capacity. So, the ability to say, for instance, buy ahead of need or to buy market access before a contingency. A good example would be what we're able to leverage during the COVID era with our medical suppliers, where we're able to get, access to gloves, gowns, masks, other things because we had bought ahead of need and we bought market access in the future. We're continuing to do that with our War Stopper program. This has been a really successful program in many categories where we either buy baseline materials that our suppliers need to make it available for them on the production line when necessary, or we keep some production lines warm so they're available when we need to apply them in a surge. So building in some more surge capability and surge clauses into our contract. And I spoke about this earlier when I said we're starting to see resourcing occur. We developed this analytical sprint almost 2 years ago called the Global Resilience Initiative. It's actually over 2 years, and it was really our estimate of what it would be required for us to sustain a global fight against a peer competitor like China or Russia. And we presented that analysis to the department, got a lot of advocacy from the COCOMs, and it's really turning into some resourcing that we haven't seen before. And a lot of that's going to go to specific weapon systems where we need to elevate readiness, but also a lot of it's going to go to our War Stopper program, where we can start to build in that lead time and then advanced production. So that's one of the foundational things that we're doing to enhance industrial based strength, is by making those investments and getting clear demand signals earlier.
So you talk about investments. You're I say this fondly. You're very much a data focused person. You have made that very clear, and you're doing a lot of great things inside DLA with the workforce to increase that data acumen, as you referred to it. But you mentioned in this paper again that logistics wins wars when data leads the fight, and logistics networks must be better connected and protected. So I know you're doing a lot of things across the enterprise, but what would you say is the most significant investment, technology investment, or initiative that you've got underway that addresses those core underpinnings of what you're focused on?
Yeah. So, I mean, I mentioned a little bit of the global resilience initiative. So, as we invest in stock and material and positioning of that, in some cases forward positioning, that's a really significant effort that we have underway. But I think foundationally, the most important one is this ability to digitize our work, right? To really move it into the data environment. And I mentioned already our efforts to modernize our supply chains to create the digital ecosystem that allows them to operate successfully, that allows us to import rapidly proven technology to solve our problems, not develop exquisite, customized, tailored tools that require 4 or 5 years of development. We don't have time for that, and it's not necessary. So, ability to create I would say, the data mesh that connects us to our warfighting partners and to industry, and then the analytical engines on top of that that can help us make good decisions and to achieve decision dominance. So I think that's the greatest challenge of this era for DLA. We're in it in knees deep right now, trying to solve that problem, and we're applying a lot of organizational energy and effort and resources in order to do that. But we think that's foundational for us to be successful in the future fight is to establish that digital backbone that allows us to integrate it. What I like to say is, we want our supply chains to be smarter, to be faster, to be better connected and better protected. So those four elements of success are what we see resulting from this investment in the digital framework within DLA.
Well, you've answered a lot of questions for me. I really appreciate it. I know you've been at the agency for shoot, I think it'll be is it 3 years next, this coming summer, right? It's 3 years?
It'll be 2 years next week. I'll put it that way.
2 years next week. Okay, alright, so I'm off the mark a little bit, but, what do you think if you had to forecast, what DLA is gonna be doing in their capabilities, and improvements, initiatives across the supply chain, but specifically in DLA, where's DLA gonna be in 10 years from now? What are you gonna be able to do 10 years from now, that you can't maybe do now? What's your vision for the future?
Well, I mean, my vision is that the agency is more agile, more adaptive, more resilient, right? So, what does that mean? How does that translate into a specific action or a specific condition in the agency? And I mentioned, that I want our supply chains to perform faster, smarter, to be better
Right.
connected and better protected. I think it's really the smarter element that we have to focus on, right? And I don't mean um, the quality of the people that we have, or it's probably more about the quality of the tools and the analytical work that we do. But as I said before, we can't afford to be imprecise. So, how do we change so we have the institutional knowledge, we have the institutional analytical capacity to make sound decisions in advance of need, so that we can best support the warfighters? By the way, that question has probably been posed by every single director of DLA, right? It's really an enduring challenge that we have on being connected with the services, anticipating their requirements, positioning capability globally so that we're ready for any range of contingencies across the spectrum of conflict. But like I like to say that if Doge existed in 1960, they probably would have come up with something like DLA in 1961, when
Yeah.
Department created the Defense Supply Agency. So I have great confidence that DLA is going to continue to respond to the challenges of the future. But the decisions we're making right now, the actions we're taking right now in this moment, in this era of technological innovation and development, I think are very consequential. And so, the things that we're doing now to transform the agency are going to pay dividends 10 years from now. And we're going to see an agency that is much more suited for the future fight than the one that we have today.
Yeah, it's exciting. You know, like I said, I left DLA in 2017, and uh, I wonder if the Admiral Harnachek and General Bush, if they would be surprised with all this occurred just in the last 5 years, if they would have envisioned that, and perhaps they would have. But it is amazing is how things are evolving and how quickly DLA is to adjust to those changes in order to even better serve their customers. So, again, I have a just a huge fondness for DLA and greatly respect everything that you're doing there, sir, with amazing people that work inside the agency. I just want to thank you sincerely for spending so much time with me today. I'm sure the listeners are going to really appreciate the information you put out, and we're all excited to see how things continue to improve in DLA from an already great job to even those higher limits that we're trying to reach as a nation, and DLA is right in the middle of that. So, again, sir, thank you very, very much for your time, and for the people that tuned in today. I hope it was beneficial for you. Uh, we've got more great sessions coming down the pike, but today was certainly a highlight for me with you, sir. So, thank you very much for your time.
Kevin, thank you for the opportunity. And, I enjoyed talking about DLA. And you mentioned, a few of my predecessors. And, everybody knows that, the success they had paved the way for the success of this agency and their reputation. And I think it really comes down to the culture here where we understand that the reason why we exist is support the war fighters, and we're all laser focused on that. So I
Yes,
definitely
sir.
benefit from their wisdom and the decisions they made in their time, and I want to have a similar positive influence upon my successors here at the agency. Very grateful for the time here. Grateful for your engagement in this opportunity as well, and I look forward to watching future podcasts.
Great. Well, I hope so, sir. And again, thank you for your time, and for everybody out there. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you again in a future podcast. Great. Thanks very much. Have a good one.
Thanks, Kevin. Warfighter always.